I'm Marcel. I run a company called IBCS Group. Actually, it's a group of companies. They're all based in Eastern Europe. Mobile computing is our game in terms of solutions, and we've been going there for about 30 years since the wall came down in Berlin. And my job is chairman, so I have to do all the strategic thinking, sort out the main suppliers, do some customer relationships, and make sure all my partners have got the latest business sort of state-of-the-art trainings. So I've involved quite a lot with creativity because we're market leaders, and if you're market leaders, all the competition are always snapping at your heels to take market share away from you. So we have to keep ahead of them by making it harder and harder for them to compete. And that needs an awful lot of creative thought. And as we're in the technology space, we have to, keep ahead of technology. And that's needs a lot of research and that kind of thing.
Okay, so when we're talking about creativity, a lot of people associate creativity with collaboration rather than competition. So from what you say, there seems to be very much of a strategy to compete rather than to collaborate. Do you think that creativity sustains itself more in a competitive or collaborative environment?
Oh, I think both. You're right about collaboration, because these days solutions, or the world is very complicated, and often you can't do everything yourself, nor should you. So collaborating, okay, maybe with competition, we do occasionally, in fact. So that is important. But ultimately, we're out there to win against the competition. I suppose, well, in certain circumstances, competition do have some skills that we can use, and sometimes we do. But you've got to be quite careful. But I think the days when you would compete with the competition at all costs, basically kill them, are over, and the days of collaboration are here, have been here for a while, in fact.
And what led to that turnaround? What led to that kind of turnaround between being extremely competitive and out to outdo the competition, kill them off, as opposed to collaborating and synthesizing and merging with each other?
Well, I wouldn't quite go that far, Jessica. We're still out to kill the competition in the nicest possible way, of course. But I think customers have become more savvy over the years, and they can do a lot of the services that we used to provide themselves, which is rather irritating. But anyway, that's how the market develops. And so they're demanding more sophisticated services now, and we can't always deliver those services, and have to develop an ecosystem of partners who can deliver those services, and that's why the market's changed. Now, of course, the people we use often pretend to be our employees when they go and visit the customer. But even if they don't, there's an understanding that we own the customer and they don't. And they get a slice of the action. And that it can be done vice versa as well, but it works very, very well.
Okay, when I was talking about synthesizing and merging, I was thinking about companies like Google, companies like Facebook that have grown and almost monopolized the industry in those fields by just, I suppose in a way, we can look at it as a collaboration of some kind because they've merged with lots of other companies, taken over.
Well, that's nice of you to compare us with Google and Facebook. But no, when you're that big, you can do those sort of things. Indeed, you probably have to. We're not that big, far from it. So we can't possibly buy all these companies up, and it has to all merge, if you like. The best we could do is collaborate with people and on a what's the word? Not hands-free basis, but anyway, arm's length basis.
When we think about very large companies like Google, for example, they seem to have a lot of scope for creativity because they have the resources that they can invest in creating that space for collaborations and creativity, whereas smaller companies may not have the resources available to be collaborative, in an altruistic kind of fashion. Do you think it's easier for smaller companies to be creative in certain ways and the larger companies need to be creative in very different ways?
I think the smaller companies are more agile, and it's perhaps easier because the decision-making process is that much quicker. A lot of the bigger companies do divide themselves into smaller silos, which allows them to be agile and flexible as well. There's no doubt about it. And you certainly can't knock companies like Google for all the amazing things they do. What I've done recently from a creative point of view is, I said earlier, we were trying to keep ahead of the competition with technology. So we're looking at blockchain at the moment, which I'm convinced will disrupt the supply chain. And to do that, I've had to research an awful lot about it. And I've come across some great proponents of it, experts in their field. I've had them down to a Vision Council kind of brainstorming session with my guys. And I've now put them on the advisory board of my company. So these are people that I couldn't possibly afford to employ or give consultancy fees to, but they seem to see our wider vision and are happy to buy into that. And we're doing some proof of concepts in that space, especially in Poland, which ultimately I hope we'll be able to take into the field and tap our existing customer base to develop some good solutions. So I guess that's the best example of collaboration, because each of those people have something to offer. They don't all run companies, but they all have expertise that they can add to our learnings, as it were, of which obviously we're starting at the beginning. So we have a lot to learn.
And I think it's very interesting that you talk about the vision and these people that you're collaborating with, they buy into your vision. And would you agree with me that creativity needs to begin with a strong vision?
Oh God, yes. I think all companies have to, all those that want to be successful have to be led by somebody at the top that has a vision. Because without a vision, your employees haven't a clue where they're going or whether they even want to go there or buy into it. And obviously that keeps them all motivated. So it does start with a vision that's, it could be as we call it, a big, hairy, audacious goal, which I'm sure you know about.
Mm-hmm.
Or it can just be a development, a natural development of where you've been going up to now, another path off it, if you like. But it is important to keep refreshing that vision as you go forward anyway.
So important that you use the word refreshing, because very often when I'm doing research, I see companies, organizations with visions, but these are visions gathering dust. They, they've written a vision statement, but it's not dynamic. No one really knows what the vision is, and it's something that it seems to be static. Have you noticed that with some organizations, that their vision seem to be kind of like just something that they've done as a formula? As you say, every company, they recognize that there needs to be the vision, but the vision doesn't really have a life.
It doesn't anymore, and perhaps it did have a life at some stage. But as you say, it's been gathering dust because perhaps nobody's looking at the vision, reminding themselves what it is or was, nor are they looking at the effects the changing markets are having on that vision, which is why so many companies get disrupted. And it sneaks up on them without knowing. So I think all visions should have a plan B and a shelf life. And if they don't, then possibly, obviously there are companies that have a vision that is valid through the ages, I suppose. Although I can't think of anybody, because everything is.
Well, there are some Japanese companies that have 100-year plans. So they have a vision for at least 100 years for the company, and employees buy into that long-term vision.
My goodness, that's brilliant.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, Brian, how do you keep your vision alive? How do you keep it dynamic? How do you make sure it's not just gathering dust?
Yeah, very good question. I guess because it's my job. Somebody's got to have a vision, and that's, I guess, what I get paid for. So I have to make myself relevant, basically, to my partners, who are quite sort of young, a lot younger than me. And although obviously I'm the biggest shareholder, so they're unlikely to get rid of me, I, as I say, have to earn my keep. And I do that by refreshing the vision the whole time. So I'm constantly going to conferences, talking to my peers, what's going on in the market. And in a way, I'm quite fortunate because operating in Eastern Europe, as I do, we are still classified as an emerging market. So we're several years behind America, for example, and the UK. And so I live in the UK, so I'm in between. I can see what's going on in the world, and I can bring that to my guys in Eastern Europe. If it was the other way, so in other words, I have to be less visionary. I just need to be alert of what's going on and understand it and be able to interpret that for my own market. If I was American, I think it'd be a lot more challenging because I'd have to see what the next big thing was, or maybe even create it, but I'm not that good. So, so yes, in a way, I'm in an easy position sitting here in the UK.
And how do you inspire your employees, the other people involved in your business? How do you inspire the other shareholders to keep that vision alive and dynamic? So
yeah, well,
the bigger picture.
Yeah, this is a challenge, and I spend an awful lot of time. You can imagine the skepticism going on at the moment about blockchain, because I'm having to. I mean, at the end of the day, that's my vision that it's going to change our world. It's not been proven, and it hasn't changed anybody else's world yet. So I haven't exactly got any use cases to back up my enthusiasm. So I'm trying to get some proof, like this proof of concept and stuff that we're doing. I guess it's a gut feel, and the fact that I can project it forward as to what I see it doing. Of course, what I've not been able to prove is that we can actually produce these solutions that that our customers want. So we're going through training at the moment, but I haven't got buy-in from all my companies. Probably 3 out of 5 are on board. 1 is actively prepared to do something. But I guess in answer to your question, I've lowered my expectations and realize that, okay, not everybody is going to come with me on day 1. So if I can convince a few and we can make some things happen and prove it to everybody else, then they'll come along with me. And I do have a track record because we continue to grow year by year. Dare I say it, because of my visions over the years, because they don't have visions, that's not their job. It's my job, as I said earlier. And it's worked so far. So that's how I tackle it, basically. It's just patience and persuasion, and it's not simple.